So you want to change the axle seal on your Oliver, and this is really pretty much the same for most of them, all going back to Fleetline tractors. Prior to that, they had a splined axle. The obvious part is obviously you gotta get the wheel off, then you gotta get the hub off. That's probably the biggest challenge. Is these U-bolts. I got lucky on this one; they weren't too bad, and drove out. You loosen them up, and I like to put the nut even with the top, that I can hit it with a hammer and kind of hope for the best. But it's common for them to get rusted into these holes. I'm going to finish driving them out, clean them up real good before it goes back together, and this is going to get painted white, so it's got a little more work ahead of it. But that gets us up to this point. Need to kind of clean things up to get the dirt off from it. Don't need dirt getting into bearings and new seals and stuff like that. So we'll clean her up. Now we need to just remove the 6 bolts and take the cap off. What? Oh. The old NiCad battery sound a little low. Try that. There are shims behind the cap, so you want to be careful when you're driving on it. And there she is. There's an O-ring back here that seals it. And there's all the shims. This one didn't appear to be leaking. Looks like it's dry in there, but we're doing a restoration. We're gonna do her right. I've made that mistake before, thinking, oh, that's not leaking, and there's lots of dirt, and the seal feels kind of hard. It's only a matter of time. Well, if it wasn't bad before, it is now. Yeah, she's a little rusty, and well, it's beat up now. Old one is a CR 32397. Depending on your model tractor, there's axle diameter differences, but they also even changed the bore in here. So even though the axle might be the same size, you might need a different seal to fit the housing. And there's stuff in the parts book that tells you this seal goes with this housing. Like this is a 1, that must be a 6. There's no 188 part numbers. 168 289A. So it would show that that seal goes with that particular housing. So I'm not going to put a list of seals on here because it just it depends on which tractor you've got. Or you can take it apart, find out what's in there, order a new one. Not as quick as putting it right back together, but so I'll get this cleaned up and the axle cleaned up so we can go back together. If you look, there is a slight lip where the size goes up on the axle, so the seal doesn't have to drag so hard all the way in. But I wanted to clean that up because once it gets to that lip, then it's got to get up on there. And dirt and stuff is not going to be good for the lip. And make that transition smoother. If for some reason your seal has cut into the surface there, you could either try to place it differently. I think I'm gonna not try to drive mine all the way down so that I'm back in on this smoother, fresher, nicely machined stuff instead of out here where it has corroded some. But you could also get a speedy sleeve and drive over that. But I don't think we're to that point on this. Like I say, I just go in just a skosh farther and I think it'll, well, or not yet, drive it in as far, because then it'll be sticking out of the cap farther, pushing it back in there. Don't want it out too far because then it could hit the bearing. There we are. Put my other glove back on. I still, even though they got the sealant on them, I like to dope them up. I've had that fail before. And I think it helps them slide in a little bit while it's still slimy. Lip, open end of the lip facing this way, the side with the spring. Oop, it's in there. Find the appropriate driver. Or something that's going to drive it appropriately. And then try to drive it in square. Like I say, I didn't bottom it out. I'm just trying to make sure it's kind of even the whole way around. That's the nice thing about bottoming it out. You know, it's square in the housing. Looks like it might be just a hair deeper on this side here. Try doing it this way. That looks a little better. I think I can live with that. So, as per usual, I will put some grease on the lip here. I'll put some grease on the O-ring. No sealant is necessary on the shims. This O-ring keeps the outside sealed up and the lip seal keeps the inside sealed up so the shims can stay dry. You still want them clean. And speaking of shims, I like to give the axle a lift. If you can feel a up and down or an in and out to it. An ever so slight one's all right, but if there's a lot of motion, then you might want to start taking shims out. You don't want to get them so tight that it's squeezing those bearings together, putting pressure on them. They'll make them hot and they'll fail. So just a smidgen of end play or easy rolling is fine. But you know, if you're moving it a significant amount, more than just a little jiggle, just a little, just where you can just feel it move. Anything more than that, you might want to start taking shims out. That squeezes, it'll push on the outer race, pushes that against the bearing, which pushes the other bearing on the other end into its race, which is against the snap ring, squeezing everything together just a little bit more and taking that free play out. So generally they hold up pretty good, not too often have to adjust them. And this one seems to be really good. It was all right before, and I can't feel any looseness in it, so I am not going to mess with it. How about we put it that way? It's not really a side up other than the flats go on the top and the bottom. You can see where they had a boss for putting a grease zerk in. Person could do that. Mostly you're just going to, I guess depending on how far you drill it through, you're going to grease the seal. They decided wasn't necessary. I've got my shim alignment off already. There we go. That's all she wrote. From there, you just put your hub back on, tighten down your U-bolts, put your wheel back on, and your tractor's ready to go. You might wonder how it gets lubrication. Of course, PTO's out right now. But as the bull gears, it's so dark in here. As the bull gears pull oil up with them, some will spill over the edge and it'll go through that bearing on the inside and it builds up in the housing and gets over to there. And then when it's sitting, not running, the oil slowly drains back through and comes back into the rear end. So the process of driving it keeps it lubricated. It's not like they're turning terribly fast, so they don't need a pump to pump oil out to them or anything. As I said in the earlier part, Oliver's design on these axles didn't change too much unless you have a planetary, outboard planetary like a 2150 or 2255, then it's a whole different ball of wax. But for these adjustable axle tractors going all the way back to the fleet lines, the process is the same. Get the wheel off, take the cap off, and change the seal out. I hope you find this useful, and as always, I appreciate everybody watching. We will see you in the next one.